our goal is to spread, like you said, and you said in the introductions, to spread a little bit more of that light of Torah and of the rabbis and of Hashem, obviously. Um, I personally, as Bali Tshuva, I think we can both relate that there's a lack of quality content in the Jewish world. And now with such a huge wave that's in part by this day of Lag BaOmer, of the revelation of the Torah of Rabbi Shimon and all the deepest secrets of the Torah, a lot of people are coming back to Judaism. A lot of people are coming back to the root. And I think it's important for both of us. We agree that we can't give up on different things that we're interested in that don't necessarily have to do with Torah, but we have to infuse them with Torah and use them as skills or as hobbies or whatever you want to call it to spread more of what we're receiving, this amazing light. If we keep it for ourselves, it's not really worth anything. So
welcome to the pod.
Welcome to the Two Tall Jews Show, presented by the On This Day in Jewish History Instagram page and brought to you by Best Shot Productions. For all your video marketing solutions, go to bestshotproductions.com and get a quote on your next video project today. We are also brought to you by jewishoriginal.com. It is our website where we post all of our On This Day in Jewish History content. In addition, we have our store that supports everything that we do. You can get a shirt like this on the Two Tall Jews Show. You get a hat. You can get a lot more. We have amazing canvases of pictures in Israel. It helps support the show. It helps support everything we do. So please take a look, jewishoriginal.com/merch.
We are the Two Tall Jews, and we are ready to go.
Today is an incredibly special. It is the Lag BaOmer special featuring Avidan and Elio, a.k.a. the two Chassids from the Two Chassids in a Pod, live from Tzfat, Israel. So we have welcome to the show, guys. So aside from this being a minor yet very important and fun Jewish holiday, Lag BaOmer, it's extra special for us because we actually started on Lag BaOmer.
wow.
So it actually marks the anniversary of our project On This Day in Jewish History, which came before the podcast. But I guess you could say with confidence that our own bonfire was lit on Lag BaOmer 5780. So it's still very much lit and growing.
Awesome.
So for those that know a little bit about the story of Lag BaOmer, they'll know that the holiday actually finds its roots in the holy city of Tzfat, where Avidan and Elio are calling us from today. And more on this soon. Avidan and Elio both grew up in the West, made Aliyah to Israel, and are both on a spiritual journey based on Torah principles and growth. Broadcasting again from this mystical city of Tzfat, the two Chassids are here to share thoughts, speak to interesting people, and spread the light of Hashem and Tzaddikim. Avidan and Elio, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Lag BaOmer special. We're happy to have you on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's an honor. It's an honor, to be honest, especially on such a special, like you said.
Yeah.
It's fun to represent.
Yeah, and it's the first time we're interviewing two people at once, so hopefully, we'll get better at this as we go.
Our wives get jealous. They think sometimes we're one, but
so a little bit of background on us. Isaac and I met about 4 years ago now.
May 2017.
There you go. 4 years ago, we met in Israel on a trip we were both in college. We were both involved on Israel advocacy on campus. So it was a trip that basically teaches you how to talk about Israel on campus. And we became friends. We wanted to start a podcast. We didn't know what on. And then once the pandemic hit, we started the blog about Jewish history. It's both a passion of both of ours. And then we started the podcast as a way to talk more about all the different things that we barely touch on the Instagram page. So we're both tall, and we decided let's just call it the Two Tall Jews Show.
How tall are you guys?
That's something we never reveal on record, but we'd love to know how tall you guys are.
Yeah,
This
we can.
This is about. Hey, we were talking about Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon's all about revealing the deeper secrets. So maybe the time has come.
I think I think it's fine because either way, I'll still probably bleep it out. So I'm I'm 6.
And I'm 6.
Wow.
Isaac makes
You
me feel
definitely
short.
are the tallest Jew.
So
I wonder, do you? I obviously you guys are in different cities. I assume, or you guys live around the corner.
Where
and
are
just
you,
decided to do
Isaac?
it like this.
I'm in Manhattan. I'm in Lower Manhattan.
I'm
Manhattan,
in
and
Miami.
Mayor lives two like highway exits from where I lived
yeah.
in Miami.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm actually not in my normal studio right now. I'm in my room with my Israeli flag, but we didn't have any Wi-Fi, so I had to last minute shift
Same
to
with
my
us.
sister's
That's
place.
why we're here too.
Yeah.
We usually have the bookcase behind
Right.
for anybody that knows two Hasids in a pod, but
Yeah,
Wi-Fi is better here.
exactly. So let's get to know each other a little bit, and maybe for our listeners, get to know you guys in case they haven't heard of the show. How did you meet, and at what point did you decide to start the podcast?
Tinder. Just kidding. Yeah, how did we meet?
We met in Rav Anavaz.
I think first time I saw you was Rav
Rabbi Alon
for
Anava.
sure.
If anybody who knows, amazing rabbi, gives really great classes on the internet.
One of the biggest rabbis I think on YouTube right now.
Yeah, he has daily prayers and different classes. I think we met there the first time.
Yeah.
I knew Avidan was doing video and different things. He's very interested in film. I, at the time, was working at a nonprofit organization here helping Jews come back to Judaism called Livnot here in Sfat. And I needed a video done, and I knew Avidan did videos. So I asked him to come over. Our wives were connected also somehow.
It's a very tight-knit community here in Sfat, so everybody knows everyone. We would see each other sometimes even at Shabbat meals, talk here and there.
And and then I had been thinking about making a podcast since Corona started. I was in Jerusalem. I only moved here in Tammuz.
It was really interesting because at the same time, I like to do video skits and funny comedy type of stuff. Already since I'm like 13, I'm making Jackass movies. I've a bit upgraded since then in my comedy levels, just a little bit. But I was looking for something to spread Judaism in my comedic way, or something interesting, but that doesn't ask too much editing, because my skits would take like sometimes weeks of editing and so I was like, what can I do like that takes less editing but still is productive? And then the other day he just comes by and is like, hey, you want to do a podcast? I'm like, I'm not sure. And then the next day I'm like, wait a second, this is a perfect opportunity.
He wasn't so down for the beginning. Like I was cooking this idea for like a year, and then I offered, and he was like, and then literally within the same week, he's like, yeah, I'm down, let's do it. And he had all the equipment, he had everything we needed. So the two minds together kind of like, just perfectly blended. So our goal is to spread, like you said, and you said in the introductions, to spread a little bit more of that light of Torah and of the rabbis and of Hashem, obviously. I personally, as Bali Tshuva, I think we can both relate that there's a lack of quality content in the Jewish world. And now with such a huge wave that's in part by this day of Lag BaOmer, of the revelation of the Torah of Rabbi Shimon and all the deepest secrets of the Torah, a lot of people are coming back to Judaism. A lot of people are coming back to the root. And I think it's important for both of us. We agreed that we can't give up on different things that we're interested in that don't necessarily have to do with Torah, but we have to infuse them with Torah and use them as skills or as hobbies or whatever you want to call it, to spread more of what we're receiving, this amazing light. If we keep it for ourselves, it's not really worth anything. So, and most importantly, that these things do exist, right? There is podcasts on Torah, different classes, or there's like, series on prayer, all these different things within the Jewish world, but there's nothing, or there's secular things or historical things like you guys are doing, very Zionistic things, but there's nothing of like Hasidic, there's no positive Hasidic content until Peter Santinello and Shlomi Zion's.
Yeah, not too much.
And, like the music scene is popping, but we just wanted to give a podcast that's like, all right, guys, we're your age, we've been through life here, we went clubbing, we did everything, and now we're tripping on this new wave of Hasidut and Zohar and Halacha and just regular Chumash and Torah, regular Torah, but maybe you haven't heard it in the conversation style, like how two friends talk. It's always in a class, getting given over. Here, it's like, all right, we're flowing, we're just boys, we're hanging out. But there happens to be a camera. It's also very
different when you have two guys that used to club every night, and now they're like full-on beards, payas, and they still talk about those experiences and what they learned from it. And it's a very different look on Judaism, Hasidus, God, the whole concept of that. And I think it's very relatable for some people than just for many people that are maybe also come from secular backgrounds or less religious backgrounds, than just to listen to a rabbi that knows nothing else than just Judaism, Orthodox Judaism. So I think it's very different.
No, I love that. It's a good segue, Isaac.
Yeah, so following the pandemic and the massive shift to digital, we saw a huge increase in Torah and Jewish learning online. Still, having said that, it seems like most rabbis are still not on the web. Why don't we see more rabbis and Hasidim like you guys in the podcast, YouTube, and general social media space? And what can we do to change that?
I think it's still very much frowned upon because of like Orthodox traditional Judaism, like, okay, stay away from the internet, stay away from social media because it's like evil, it's bad, it's dangerous. There's a lot of that still, but
which there's truth to.
There is some truth to that because there is a lot of nonsense out there that could affect some people and they could like get off the path and it can drag them into the deep end, so to speak. But also at the same time, it has like an amazing potential. And now people seeing it more and more, and it's being more accepted, especially in Chabad, which my Rebbe calls modern orthodoxy. Like they're taking like what is available and they use it for what it was made for. The Rebbe actually said like radio was made for Tanya.
Right.
So it's like just it's about how you use the social media, how you use the internet, how you use the tools.
And with that, I'd also like to add just shortly that there's different views on Kiruv. As a whole, as a Jewish organism, right? We're not a religion, we're a people. The Torah applies to everybody, whether you consider yourself religious or not. I don't know if you guys know Rudy Rockman. I think you had him on. We grew up together. We were very good friends. And
you just define Kiruv real quick.
What?
Can you just define Kiruv?
Kiruv is comes from the word karov or likarev, to bring closer in Hebrew. This is what I was going on to say, that the Torah applies to all Jews. The term Orthodox, conservative, reform, that's a conservative, a Christian impression onto the Jewish experience that we didn't have beforehand. We are just a people. We all have the Torah. We all have to go by it. There's different levels of how much you want to observe or how much you want to do. That's on the individual person. But as a nation and as individual Jews, we all have to keep the Torah, right? In whatever way possible. So there's this process now of people coming back. It really kind of started after 1967 when the Jews came back to Jerusalem. Right. And within that, there's different approaches, especially within the Hasidic community. It was explained to me not too long ago that there are those that go out of their way. They leave the Beit Midrash, they leave the study hall to go bring their brothers and sisters back. And that's the Chabad way. That's why we see them in India, in Thailand, in Mexico, in Cancun, all these different places, you know, going into clubs in Tel Aviv to light Chanukiahs. Because they go out of their way to bring their brothers and sisters back and to try to help them connect more to themselves and to God and to their nation. Then there's a more reserved approach, but still willing and looking and seeking to help, which is similar to how Breslov is, where they're waiting in the door. You might see Breslovers going out, but they're just giving you a book or, you know, or like a song or something. And here, take this, go get on your path. I'm not going to like walk you through it. Right. But I'm here in the door. If you come up to me, I would love to help you and bring you into the Beit Midrash and bring you into the study hall and let's learn some Torah. And then there's a much more reserved approach, which is the mainstream Chassidut and the different Haredi worlds, that it's like, I'm inside the Beit Midrash. If you come up to me and you ask me to learn, we'll learn, no problem. But I'm not going to be waiting in the door for you. And I'm definitely not going out of my shell to go try to pull you back. So there's different approaches. They're all kosher. They're all needed. And some people are not built to deal with people that are not on their level. Some people need to be, you know, confined and constricted and not to go out. And that's how some giants are grown.
I like that. I like the way you broke that down.
Question. When was the last time both of you guys shaved?
Where?
When? Oh, where?
Where?
It's been a while for sure.
Nice.
Last time I would trim here, and I trim my mustache. Some people don't. I do, according to the Arizal. You shouldn't cover.
There's different traditions. Some Hasidut keep it long.
But a long time. In general, I don't touch down here. Just some background knowledge. The extra hair, anything extra that you have in life is rooted in din, in judgment and constrictionness and any excess thing that you have in your body that you don't really need, it's a place for potential for judgments and hardships to attach to. So that's why you see a lot of Hasidic Jews, they'll cut their hair over here, which is the place of deen, the place of judgment. They'll cut it short, and they leave longer peyot. It doesn't necessarily need to be this long, but longer peyot, which represent chesed, which is loving kindness and giving, and the sweetness. So you have the sweetness coming out of the judgment. And then you have the beard, which is rachamim, which is the mixture of the two, which is tiferet, the completion, the week that we just finished in the Omer, which is these two mixed together, which is the beard. So you don't want to touch it. You don't want to touch the mercy at all. But
right, that's a good segue for why we leave our beards. It has a Kabbalah interpretation, right? Because there's no like halacha.
The halacha is you cannot shave. You cannot shave like with a blade, exactly.
Right. And 5 different points on your face. There's a different agreements, what those 5 points are. So a lot of people just don't touch.
It's also different, like according to who you're going. There's slightly different halachas. Maybe it's a bit longer. Maybe it's.
And there's machines, right?
But the not shaving at all is definitely Hasidic.
Yeah, Kabbalistic. But there's machines, right? That that they're not razors. Sometimes people need to be careful with that too, because in Israel, a lot of them have kosher stamps on them, like restaurants and like food products, because if the technology is so good that it's doing the exact same process as a razor blade, so then it still doesn't help that it's a machine. It needs to be one that doesn't uproot the hair.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So you've had some guests on your show. You've done some episodes alone. So who has been the most meaningful guest that you've had on, and why?
I think we just had him on.
Yeah, he hasn't come out. Oh, by this time the episode will be out, actually.
Yeah, Rabbi Lipschitz, my rabbi, my mentor.
Great.
Mashpia, we call it. He's a shaliach. He's like an emissary of the Rebbe Lubavitch, like very old generation, like one of the first ones. And he's a veteran. He's been everywhere in the world. He's been in Crimea for 25 years, in the craziest place in Russia. He's been. Wow, he has some crazy stories, so it's gonna be it's an amazing one. We were both blown away, but
that's episode 17. For anyone who wants to check that out. And I would also say that like having on Eduardo Bolsonaro, who is the son of the president of Brazil, and
that was an interesting one,
and a non-Jew, right? And we didn't even really plan it. It happened within 24 hours. We made that all happen, completely spontaneous, with some Jewish chutzpah involved. But like that was also really interesting, because then you have a person that is not Jewish, he's not this, but he's so interested in Hasidim. He answers a lot of things off camera that were way deeper.
Very cool episode, yeah.
So that was also cool. So you have both the extreme tzaddik rabbi and then the politician from Brazil.
Best world.
And who's your dream guest? Who's like the one that
Mashiach.
Yeah. Okay, so after Mashiach, if you can't get him,
I think one goal we have for the near future is definitely Nissim Black.
Oh yeah.
That's like an achievable goal.
Right, it's possible.
One that would be, I think, a little bit bigger. But to have them in person, YY Jacobson, maybe Rabbi YY Jacobson.
I'm looking forward to Rav Alon Nava actually.
Rabbi Alon Nava, we live right next to him. Yeah. I'm a neighbor of his. It's just a matter of getting him to sit down.
Yeah, so some things coming up. We already talked. Is probably gonna be very soon. This other show.
For us, it's Amari. So if you know anybody that knows Amari,
we do. But I can try to put the message out there for you.
Yeah, I've been DMing him. I sent an email to his manager. I there was a typo in the email. I wanted to shoot myself, but whatever. Hopefully we can.
You're probably gonna have to wait to the off season, because they're gonna go pretty deep into June or maybe May. We'll see.
Well, that's our white whale. Isaac, go ahead.
Text me afterwards. We'll see what we can do. I'm not promising anything, but I do know people that are close.
So
If you guys could share a Shabbat meal with any 3 Jewish figures throughout Jewish history, who would they be?
Can we go each, or does it have to be a 2 chassid and a pod meal?
I don't know. No, each. So it's gonna be 6 total. You can have an overlap.
Yeah, for me it would for sure be number 1, the Lubavitch Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, and I think the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe Lubavitch. Yeah.
Okay, I would go with Nachshon ben Aminadav, the first Jew to start walking into the sea. David Melech, so he could sing us some amazing songs. And I would like for the meal to be hosted by Avram Avinu.
Nice.
The biggest host ever, and I'll be the guest.
Love it. That's good. That's a new question that we've added. Actually, it's going to be more prevalent in season 2. You guys are actually going to be our last episode of season 1. So.
Oh wow! How do seasons work? We're new to this thing. So when do you cut a season?
When we get too busy to continue. We're doing a lot of pre-recording now. We're probably going to have like probably 15 episodes ready for season 2 of just like evergreen content. This is a different kind of episode. This is obviously we're going to get into Lag BaOmer soon. So
now it's a special because it's the last one of the season. It's Rabbi Shimon's yahrzeit on Lag BaOmer, and the first time interviewing two Jews at once. It's a big thing.
So it's a topic that you guys have discussed on your podcast, the idea that ultra-Orthodox Israelis don't join the army. So this is sort of a 3-part question. What are the actual stats in terms of the numbers? Why don't more join? And what can we do to change their opinion towards the army?
Okay. So I'd like to answer this. We both, by the way, went to the IDF. I did draft with a kippah on my head. Mm-hmm. The IDF changed that, and that plays a big part in why a lot of ultra-Orthodox are not willing to go to the IDF. With that said, the Dati Leumi crowd, what they call in Israel, like our version of modern Orthodox, the religious Zionists, they by far are the strongest population in the military, in terms of success, in terms of the amount of how many of them go to combat or into intelligence and very important roles, how many of them become officers and enlisted officers, and become generals and become leaders in the IDF system. Now, this is going to be a long answer because it is a very complicated situation that I'm very privy on and I take very seriously. And the first thing I want to say is obviously no animosity or anything. Just your question came from a point like, what do we do to get more of the IDF, more of the religious people into the IDF? Mm-hmm. Whereas the question in my eyes should be, do we need them in the IDF? Mm-hmm. And how much do we need them in the IDF? As a past soldier, for every one combat soldier, there's over 9 soldiers that do a non-combat role to support him. The IDF is jam-packed with people. The Israeli secular society in Tel Aviv as a metropolitan, which includes from Herzliya down to around Rishon LeZion area, the draft rate is lower than the Druzim. Okay, so there's tons of people getting out there for college, to go overseas to work, psychotic problems or psychology issues.
Yeah, actually, a lot of my previous friends, when I used to hang out, go out in Tel Aviv, would just go clubbing, and that's the reason they went out of the army, like I said, for psychological reasons. I had a lot of those friends.
So there's that issue that no one talks about. But what is the one issue on the other end that you look at the religious people? Their ideals don't align with the state, which is true. We are very appreciative, but it's not the ideal to have a secular state when the Jews are coming back home. But we're thankful, and obviously God has his plan. Back to the IDF issue. The Haredim, the IDF has been doing amazing steps to try to allow more Haredim to come in. Netzach Yehuda was the first step, which is allowing Nachal Haredi, is what it was originally called, allowing kids that don't really make it in the yeshiva world, but are not secular, maybe the black sheeps of the Haredi families, to allow them to start coming, and the Hasidic families to come into the IDF, to be busy for a few years. They have 1 hour of learning a day. I'm sure on their free times they can do more chavrutas. No girls in the unit. Every job that's done by a girl is done by a man. I was in Kfir, so I worked side by side with them. I saw how they trained. They had walls around their section of the base. And then when I was getting out of the army in end of 2014, 2015, they started new units in Givati and in San Chanim and different places where they have actual Haredi units that they come, they're allowed to wear white and black on base when they're learning and they're praying, and then when they're working, they switch into the green, work outfits, Madei Bet, what we call them in the army. And there's also Beinishim, which is the Hesder Yeshiva system. That is a 5-year process where you go to yeshiva for 2 years or 1.5 years, then you go to the army for 2 years, and you go back to yeshiva. So there are many different ways, and there are tons of Jews that look like me and way more religious than the both of us put together that are very powerful. A lot of them are the best soldiers and the most motivated, and they see the mitzvah within the IDF. They see the different things. With that said, like we said about Kiruv earlier, how much are you going to go out of your way to bring Jews back to Judaism? With that said, how fit is an average yeshiva kid that grew up speaking Yiddish, that is this skinny or really big and never did anything physical in their life, and they're sitting, not that it's a good thing, right? But this is the reality of the situation. They're sitting learning books all day long. Some of these yeshiva students, their soul is like butter. They're the sweetest kids. They have no idea what violence is besides shchita, killing an animal, or brit milah, you know.
Also, we need to remember there was an agreement to preserve Judaism in the beginning with the state. Like I think Ben Gurion.
We said it on the Eduardo Bolsonaro thing. We have a clip about it. Yeah, that the David Ben Gurion says no, everyone has to go to the army. And the Chazon Ish at the time was a big rabbi at the time. He said we were just slaughtered in Europe. All the yeshivas were destroyed, and we can't now just go straight to the army and no one's going to be staying learning Torah. Besides the fact that as Jews, as a nation, historically soldiers went out, one warrior, one person reading Tehillim, praying to Hashem. That's how they would go out, 2 by 2s. In the armies, we still go now 2 by 2 in the IDF, but you're both soldiers and not so much prayer going on, right? So it's a very complicated situation. There's a lot of lies in the media. It's really not the case how they explain it. There's a huge population that does not want to draft on the leftist, secular side in Tel Aviv, that they do everything in their power and they have the money to do it to get out of the IDF. And most importantly, there's not enough space. With that said, also the religious Zionists are getting stronger and stronger within the IDF, and the IDF doesn't like that, and they take steps to try to fight it. So they want the Haredim to draft, but they don't like when the ultra-Orthodox are being successful in the IDF, and there's no room for them. So what exactly do they want? It's a lot of media noise, and it's really not a real situation.
I think at the end of the day, we both believe in a healthy balance of like IDF, we support an army. We need an army, obviously, but also we believe we need a stronghold of learning, Torah learning, and prayer.
Right.
Well, and we need to get women out of the IDF point blank, like at least out of combat roles. It's terrible. They're not good soldiers, and it's not a sexist thing or anything. This is statistics. The IDF finally admitted after years of trial. The IDF itself, after lying in countless tests, finally released reports that the women program of combat soldiers is a failure, and really? And they can't. It's.
I was actually in base with them, and it was indeed very interesting to watch. Let's just keep it at that.
But they're not good as as officers to train.
Training is one thing. Not being an actual combat soldier is one thing. I me personally, I'm against that as well, because what goes on base is just like college campuses, and these are the daughters of Israel. We don't need them being on frat houses, which is what every single base is, right? Filled with drugs and drinking, and right. We don't need that. But these girls shouldn't be on the same bases with guys, but definitely not in combat, because they are actually very good instructors, the best instructors, but they are horrible, and I'm not exaggerating, soldiers. So it's a problem.
Definitely more nuanced than most people take it, for sure.
This was the day Elio was canceled.
On this day in Jewish history. It's all good. I'm free to talk to whoever wants to.
We've heard worse on this show. Don't worry. We haven't released all of the things that have been said on here. So just to switch the conversation back to more Torah and stuff. So you mentioned you're both Baalei Teshuva, which means you are masters of returning. Literally, that's the definition, Baal Teshuva.
I like to call it return, Choser Teshuva, because masters, I'm far from it personally, and I know he is too.
So,
just kidding.
It's all good.
He's much better than me.
Speaking
to be honest.
So then, this is a good question. So, what of the many daily and weekly rituals that come with being observant, religious, whatever you want to call it, what are the ones that you feel closest to, and what's something that you're working to improve individually?
So what was it again?
Out of everything,
what's the ritual or custom that you feel closest to?
Okay.
What's the one that you are working to improve?
You want to go ahead? The one I feel let's say the mitzvah I enjoy the most.
Yeah.
Is that
Sure.
Yeah. So that's for sure is Kiddush. For some, I really connect to doing Kiddush. Even like I grew up more than Orthodox, actually. And so we did Shabbos, we did all the commandments. And at a certain point, I drifted off. But we would always do Kiddush. I would almost always do Kiddush. I remember even in the time when I was like living in Poland and I had a non-Jewish girlfriend, I would even then do Kiddush. And I would invite people over, and I would always do that. And it sticks very close to me. It always kept me close to God. Even like I maybe was skeptical at times about Torah and stuff, but it was like something I couldn't let go, and I feel very close to. And then the other one, what was it again?
Which one do you need to improve on?
Which one do you need to improve on? Prayer for sure. It's also kind of connected with Kiddushins. It is a prayer. My focus, I'm like kind of like I'm a very creative person, so I like to think and like drift off and dream and like think of things. And so that's something I need to work on, to disconnect for a certain amount of time when I just can connect to the Almighty.
Right.
That's for me.
And for me, I would say that the mitzvah I connect the most with, I kind of, they are two separate mitzvahs. They kind of, in my eyes, they blend as one, which is Torah and Tefillah. Learning Torah and also praying. On the Torah side of things, sometimes and a lot of times it's not even really so much about gaining the knowledge. It's really, majority of the times it's not about gaining the knowledge. It's more about the connection. When you read, it's Hashem talking to you, and then when you pray, it's you talking to Hashem. And there's the three daily prayers that come with a text written by the giant sages that we've had in the history in Judaism, which is, it's very important and opens a ton of gates, and is written in a way that we don't even understand really what's going on there. There's obviously we understand the words, but there's so many hidden secrets within there. But more importantly is what Rabbi Nachman brings down, which is personal prayer, talking to Hashem about anything. If a button falls off your shirt, Hashem, my button fell. I need a new button. That's one of the examples Rabbi Nachman gives. And my rabbi here in Tzfat, Rabbi Yoel Torjman, he gives an amazing piece of advice that if you could just give 1% of your day to yourself, that would open up everything. And what is it to yourself? Yeah, take 1% of your day, which is 14 minutes. There's 1,440 minutes in a day. It's amazing to know how much time we have. Right. Take 1% of that, which is 14 minutes, and just sit down and have a conversation with Hashem. And it sounds crazy, but whatever way is comfortable for you. If you want to write it down in a notebook, if you want to talk out loud, which is the best way, in your own language. It shouldn't be in Hebrew. It shouldn't be in any language you're not comfortable in, the language you're most comfortable in, and say thank you. Tell them how you're feeling. Tell them what's hard for you. Tell them what you need, what you want, what you think you want, what you think you know. And for me, that's it. Torah and Tefillah. And then the one I need to work on more.
Being nicer to me.
Yeah. No, it's
just kidding.
Not him specifically, but like V'ahavta Recha Kamocha, which is a big, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Akiva Torah. You should love your fellow Jew as yourself. It's a very, very complicated mitzvah with so many details in it. And just being sensitive to people, I think, would, for me, which ties very much in with this day of Lag BaOmer, of Hod Shebahod, the splendor within the splendor, reception within reception. It's very deep things. We can go into that later if you want to ask me again about the 33. Why is it 33? But
we'll go into it.
So that for me, becoming a better person towards others. I think that would be the hardest mitzvah for me, and the one I'm trying my best to work on.
And for people that don't know, maybe that's really the heart of the Torah, is loving your fellow yourself. That's what it all comes down to. All the commandments, like not stealing, not murdering, not covet your fellow's property and wife, all that stuff comes down to if you're basically loving your fellows yourself. Because when it comes down to everything is godliness, everything, there's like one God and he's all in his one. And when you realize that, you're gonna be nice to everyone because they're all part of that oneness.
Gotcha.
What's a good piece of advice for someone that is just starting to learn Torah, just starting to get into the groove of becoming a Baal Teshuvah, for them to not be discouraged and keep growing?
I would say, like, take it easy, because many people get like very inspired and very motivated and they want to go all the way. And that's great, the fire. You shouldn't turn down the fire ever. But it's important to know like take it step by step, take a mitzvah at a time. Because if you take everything, like you're gonna eventually drop it all. It's possible. It's not always, but like if you're holding too much, it's
and then you might be pushed off forever. So it's better to just take baby steps. I was gonna say exactly what Avidan said, but I'll add to that. There's two Mishnah. There's two Jewish teachings in the Mishnah Codex of the Jewish law. One is make for yourself a rabbi and you will remove doubt. Once you have a rabbi or a guide, a spiritual guide that's leading you on this path, and you have to be humble in order to to receive the messages that this person is giving to you. And obviously he has to be on a certain level, but he has to be also able to relate to you and know the situations that you're in and see where you're coming from and understand your world. Once you have that, you definitely are more guided. And the other Mishnah is make for yourself a rabbi and acquire for yourself a friend. Now, there's two ways to understand it. There's the way I understood it mistakenly for my whole entire life until about 2 years ago, which is make for yourself a rabbi, comma, that you now have acquired for yourself a friend. That rabbi should be like a friend to you. That rabbi, like I said, it needs to understand where you're coming from. You should be able to have your most deepest conversations with him. It can't always be some rabbi that I'm scared to even look at his shoes. It has to be somebody you can relate to. And the other way that is more classically taught that I didn't know was that it's two different things. Make for yourself a rabbi and acquire for yourself a friend. You need a friend. Yeah, you need a friend. You need, just like that's what two chassidus in a pod is. We're not teaching Torah in a class format. We're having a conversation like we're doing right here, right? And your conversation as a Jew should be involved with Torah, So whether you're working or having fun or talking to your wife, whatever it is, you should be talking Torah. So those are the things I would say.
What's your go-to part of Torah to learn more about?
Well,
for us or for people out there?
For you.
Well, I think it's the perfect day for that because today is. Not today, when Lag BaOmer hits, which will be possibly when this will be today.
Come on, Mr. Video Editor.
We're already there.
So Lag BaOmer is the birthday kind of the inner depth of Torah, the Kabbalah of Torah, the Zohar, the Chassidut, the deeper meaning, the mysticism. And I would say for myself, I can talk for you, but for myself, it definitely is the mysticism, the deeper meanings, the purpose of life, of God, of what this is all about, the beauty, the sweetness of the Torah. That's in the inner depths of Torah. You won't find that. Sometimes you'll find that also, like the Torah itself is also sweet, but sometimes it's like it's harder to digest sometimes. But the inner depths of Torah is like
layers,
so sweet and so beautiful. And
same thing. Chassidut, Chassidut. Definitely, halacha is very important to know. One, halacha teaches you a lot about Jewish culture. We don't shake hands with women. We don't kiss a woman high when we meet a woman, or different things that like they're not our culture. They're not our thing. So on the cultural side, as being a Jew and wanting to connect more to the Jewish people, halacha is very important. And also to know when you're doing that, you start to develop your brain in a way that you look at every single situation. And you ask yourself the same question: what does Hashem want from me right now? What is the best way for me to do this? And you have to learn some of these things. But I think that the mixture of Chassidut and Kabbalah and halacha, sorry.
So again, we're sitting with Avidan and Elio, hosts of the Two Chassidus in a Pod, a show that dives deep into their personal lives as Chassidim in Tzfat, Israel, and spreading the light of the Torah, hosting incredible guests in the process. You can find them on all podcast platforms and YouTube, on Instagram. Anywhere else? Well, that's pretty much it.
Telegram. LinkedIn, I need to work on a little bit more, but we're there. Can link back to the other thing.
So we've been mentioning it. We've scratched the surface a little bit, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about Lag BaOmer. As we mentioned, it's a very special day for us. It was the first time that we posted something on This Day in Jewish History, and it was the figuratively the fire that was lit that led to this podcast, that led to everything that Isaac and I have been doing for the last year. So can one of you share a little bit about what Lag BaOmer is on a pshat level, on a very simple level, and then maybe why it's an underrated holiday?
Yeah, so basically, historically, on this day in Jewish history, the main simple thing, there's two things. One is the Lag Bomer always falls on the 18th of Iyar, 2 days after my birthday, which is it is the day that Rabbi Shimon passed away. Okay, the day that he passed away, he called his student Rabbi Abba to the house, and he said that he wants to give over all of the Torah. Rabbi Abba said, "Me, write down now all of your Torah. It would take me years and years and years. Take me forever." So he said, "I'm going to make the sun stop. It's not going to set tonight. And you write, and when you're done, the sun will set."
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, right?
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said it to Rabbi Abba, and they started writing down these manuscripts. Also, as well as that, who is Rabbi Shimon? So Rabbi Shimon was a student of Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef, who was a Baal Tshuva himself, a son of converts.
At the age of 40?
At the age of 40, he went to kindergarten to go learn Aleph Bet. So anybody who out there is trying to learn Hebrew, it's a very good thing that you're doing.
And we're now actually on the street of his teacher.
Yeah, and we live here in Nachum Ish Gamzu. Well, Rabbi Dan lives here, and it's right next to the kever, the tombstone of Nachum Ish Gamzu, which was Rabbi Akiva's Rebbe. So Rabbi Akiva had 24,000 students, and he had these 24,000 students. And at a certain point in time in history, some will say, the historians think, and I think it might fit, that Rabbi Akiva, he believed in Bar Kochva at the time as being the Mashiach. And when he passed away, he stopped. But at the time, he was sure it was him. And historians say, in a very obviously it's tied to Judaism, but like in a very historical sense, that Rabbi Akiva, because he was so sure that the Bar Kochva was the Mashiach, that he took all his students and he made them soldiers in Bar Kochva's revolt against the Romans. I've heard it explained that they were in a certain place. A plague came through the camp, and 24,000 of them died. It was about 700 a day, give or take, every day that they were bearing. The rabbis explained that this happened because they didn't act with respect to one another, which was pretty crazy, because Rabbi Akiva's whole entire idea, he says, loving your fellow Jew as yourself is a big principle in the Torah. So it doesn't really add up, although this is obviously what the rabbis are saying, but it's hard to comprehend what this means, that they didn't respect one another. We're not going to go into that now, but according to what the rabbis say, that on the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer, which was also 18th of Iyar, years before, the last of the students died, and Rabbi Akiva wasn't killed; he didn't die. So that's one reason to survive, to start to celebrate that they stopped dying. Rabbi Akiva stayed alive. Then Rabbi Akiva, after this whole situation went on, he went down to the Chachamim in the Dorom, to the sages in the south, and he made for himself 5 new students. Among them were Rabbi Meir Balanes and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Akiva is known in the Gemara that he already was doing Kabbalistic meditations. All of them did. Any rabbi that's mentioned in the Talmud, it's known as a tradition that if their name was mentioned in the Talmud, they had the ability to resurrect the dead, and obviously many other things. So obviously these rabbis were among those. And he passed down all of the Kabbalah that he received to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, his famous story is that there was a discussion amongst rabbis going on, and they started to discuss about all the developments that the Roman Empire were doing within Israel. Bridges, marketplaces, bathhouses, and everyone gave their opinion, what is your opinion on what they're doing? And people went around and praised it and said it was good. They're developing the land. They're giving us things that we can use. There's a new supermarket. There's a new park. Right? We can still relate to these things. And Rabbi Shimon said, no, everything they do, they only do it for themselves. It has nothing to do with us. They're doing it for their own name. They're doing it for their own culture. They're doing it to try to turn us into Romans. It's nothing to do with us. And it's not for our benefit. We might benefit from it, but that's only in order to pull us in. One of the people that was there hearing this conversation was a son of converts named Yehuda ben Geri, and he ran and he snitched on Rabbi Shimon to the Romans. The Romans put out most wanted person in the Roman Empire, Simon, son of Yochai. So for a while he hid in the Beit Midrash in the study hall until it was not possible anymore, and he ran into a cave. escaped into a cave with his son, Rebbe Lazar, and they spent 12 years there in the cave, buried up to their necks, learning Torah all day long. In the deepest Torah, they would bury themselves up so they didn't have to deal with any impurities, not touch anything, wash your hands, and go inside. Many miracles happened and able to keep them.
On Shabbos, they would like dress up, right?
Yeah.
Only on Shabbos.
And they would get the trees that were outside were switching
to
days.
Gemara?
Yeah, this is in the Gemara. I think a lot of it is in Masechet Shabbat. I'm not sure. This is brought down in the Gemara. And then after 12 years, they come out. A voice comes out. They learned with Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet in there. They led with the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu, the faithful shepherd. A whole different esoteric and mystical beings, souls that came down to teach them this wisdom, besides what they had learned from Rabbi Akiva. And after 12 years, a voice comes out and says that they can come out. Rabbi Shimon comes out with his son. They're walking, in the street. They're walking street, whatever, in the fields, and they see a farmer plowing his field. And he said, "This is what they're doing. You have the Torah, you have all the amazing Torah, and this is what people are doing: plowing fields and sowing seeds." And it says that they started to burn the fields and destroy everything with their eyes, right? Whatever this means. So a voice comes out and says, "This is what you came to the world for, to destroy my world. Go back to the cave." So they go back to the cave for another year until they're able to come out. And when they come out, they see a Jew running with 2 myrtle branches, 2 adasim, like we still have this custom in Judaism nowadays. And Rabbi Shimon asked this guy, "What are you doing? Where are you running to?" He says, "It's about to be Shabbat. I have 2 adasim, 2 fragrances to bless on. One is shamor and one is zachor. One is to guard and one is to remember the Shabbat." So then he smiled and he was happy. He understood that, okay, the first time they came out, how are people dealing with this world? Then he had to go back and come down, so to say, from 12 years of the highest level of Torah learning. Like Rabbi Dani said, not to run into the Torah, go slowly, go steps. So they obviously didn't run in. They were giants already before they went into the cave. But they reached such levels that they had to have a period of come down and realization of the situation they're going back in. And then Rabbi Shimon kept on teaching Torah, and Zohar brought all this out. Zohar means the shine, the glow, the splendor. And he passed away on the 18th of Iyar, which is Lag B'Omer. And in the Zohar, it says that when he called Rabbi Abba into the house, and all the Chevraya Kadisha were there, all the holy friends were there that he had been learning with, the whole entire house was on flames, and only a few, like 2 or 3 people could come inside the house. There was a huge fire surrounding Rabbi Shimon's house. So that's one of the reasons we have bonfires, as many others.
Yeah. Also, one of the reasons we have a fire is because the whole thing is the birth of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, is the passing away of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai on Lag B'Omer, the 33rd of the Omer falls on the 18th of Iyar. That's why it's like Lag B'Omer, right? It's the 33 that falls on the 18th of Iyar every year. This is when, like you said, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai passed away, and it's in Hasidus. It's in teaching of Hasidus is known that maybe from other people it's really strange, but it's a joyous day when a righteous person passes away. On that day, it's actually a very joyous day. Why? Because on the day, we see when there's a righteous person, he has a lot of good deeds, right? Like he helps people, he goes beyond himself, he learns a lot of wisdom, godliness. He's constantly not involved with himself, but with other people and with God. So he attains this holy level. But this holy light, this holy level, can only be revealed in a certain extent because his body is still limiting. But when he passes away, this limitation of the body doesn't exist anymore. Now he's only a soul. So now actually all the deeds that he did in his life, all the mitzvot, all the Torah that he learned, are now actually revealed without any limitation in different spiritual ways. And because of that, and you see also for example, the Kabbalah, the Zohar that he wrote on the day, this is the wellspring. Then it started really spreading all over the world.
It happened with Moshe Rabbeinu, Sefer Dvarim, the last book of the Torah, the 5 books of the Torah, is 136-day speech from Moshe Rabbeinu, repeating the whole entire Torah and preparing them. Yaakov, Jacob, or farther, when he came to pass, brought all the children in front of him, starts giving their blessings and the prophecies of what the tribes will become.
For that reason, it's a very joyous day. And the reason one of the reasons we have a fire is because the spirit of the mysticism, the spirit of the inner depths of Kabbalah, of Torah. It's like when you learn this also, you want to go up, you want to go to a higher conscious, like the flame, it's like it goes up, and it's like that spirit of fire also, where you get a fire when you learn this Kabbalah, the Zohar. When you learn Hasidus, you get the spirit of motivation. It's a very fiery thing, and it's also fun, like to sit around. It's very joyous around the fire, singing, bonfire, eating potatoes.
One thing is on the note of what you mentioned about when a tzaddik passes away, and it's like actually a special day, and it's the reason why you visit the kever, you visit the grave of a tzaddik or a tzaddikus, a female tzaddik. So I'm learning Tanya. I just started learning with a friend, and in the beginning there's a moment where he says that the Baal Tanya says that Hashem only made certain tzaddikim for certain periods of time. And it's interesting because it's a discussion about how in certain periods of, like, are we a tzaddik, or are we a rasha, or are we a benoni? So it's like, so you're telling me that you only created a certain amount of tzaddikim. So how am I supposed to be a tzaddik if there's only a certain amount? It's likely that I'm not a tzaddik. So in a way, it also makes it even more special, because these tzaddikim that are alive, it's like, oh, I get to merit being alive with them. The Rebbe, for example, and that's why the Ohel is so special, because it's like I'm literally alive at the same time as this person, and then. So then obviously when he passes away, like, it's not like he's gone, right? A person doesn't die until the last person says their name. So even more, when a tzaddik dies, it's like that the grave, and that's one of the, when I went to Tzfat, you know, you go to the cemetery, it's a very, the Arizal is buried there, and like, I don't know who else, you mentioned someone else.
Ramak, Rabbi Nachman's daughter, Rabbi Natan's son,
right?
Rabbi Yosef Karo, his
so
sons.
all these, right? So it's, you know, Tzfat is like, a lot of people say like, oh, I don't know what it was about Tzfat. It's like, I'll tell you what it was about Tzfat. There's an energy that's beyond this world still there. And, you know, obviously all the Torah that's learned there, but it's these graves. And, you know,
that's how Tzfat started historically. After the Inquisition, the Jews, obviously a large portion of them wanted to come to Eretz Yisrael. And when they came in from the north, right, they come and they come across Tzfat, and it's known that Rabbi Shimon is here in Meron. But Tzfat is on the mountain looking right across, right? You can't walk in Tzfat at night and not see the light of Meron. It's impossible, nearly, unless you have a building blocking you. But anywhere that you have open air, which is the majority of Tzfat, you see Rabbi Shimon no matter where you go. And that's why a lot of them came here. There's a lot of water here on the physical level. There's a lot of water, and they dealt with textiles and wool. So it's very similar climate as well to Spain and Portugal. And then, but also on the Kabbalistic side, on the spiritual side, you had Rabbi Shimon right across the mountain. You can get there in a 2-hour walk. So those are the two reasons that they came here and they started. And then in Tzfat, you had revealed, Yosef Karo reveals the Shulchan Aruch, which is like the codex of Jewish law that every single religious Jew goes by, and technically it applies to all Jews as well. And then you also have the Arizal, which was completely the, you know, bringing down everything Rabbi Shimon taught and explaining all the Kabbalistic side.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
Right. So we're in the Omer. Right. As mentioned, the name of this holiday is simply translated as the 33rd day of the Omer. You guys have been sharing amazing posts explaining different Kabbalistic insights of the Omer on Instagram. Can you go a little bit deeper into what these posts mean and what is so special about this specific day that is set apart from the rest?
He's the man behind it all.
So I wanted to, like, everything we do is to spread Torah and to spread specifically the deeper meanings in Torah. But also, with that said, you know, we're trying to grow a podcast and a brand, so we need to come up with different forms of content, which I'm very big on. All Jewish people that have a way of spreading more knowledge about our nation and about our Torah and about our God. And you have the ability to make quality content like Two Tall Jews, like any of these other podcasts that are out there. I strongly encourage it. Anyone who needs help with, I'm there to give advice and help. With that said, what my goal is to, one, create a new source of content to share with people, but also to take advantage of this amazing time. The Omer is a time to work on yourself from the period of leaving Egypt towards getting to Mount Sinai and receiving the Torah. We have a long process of 50 days to work on yourself in order to be able to do that. A lot of this comes down from the Zohar.
Finding your character. It's
exactly.
all about the characteristics, the emotional.
Yeah. So the Zohar explains that we have 10 energies. You can look at it kind of like as a transformer, like an electric transformer. Hashem's light comes down purely into the world. And then if it were just to come here without any vessels, the world would explode. So there's these 10 vessels that bring it down to a more refined way for us to be able to exist and do what we need to do. The upper three are called the mochin, are called the intellect, and they consist of keter, chokhmah, and bina, or in other circles, it's chokhmah, bina, and dat. And they're all the intellectual things going on, understanding, knowledge, consciousness. And then you have the 7 lower midot, what they're called, which means measure, and they're called the attributes, the character traits, that is loving kindness, constriction, the balance of the two, beauty and overcoming, giving room, and then the ultimate reception and action of all of these, and also yesod, which is the foundations and the roots. And then also the malchut, which is the action, and it receives from everyone else. So that's like a very not good explanation, just to keep on the time, but that's the main principle. And during the Omer, we're working on our 7 lower midot that involved, a lot of it has to do with man and man, and two people in relationships. And there's a book called Matok Midvash, which is an explanation of the whole entire Zohar, the only complete explanation of the Zohar that's out there. It was written by a rabbi, Daniel Frisch, that passed away not too long ago. It's an amazing tzaddik, very humble person. And he wrote an all-encompassing explanation on the Zohar using previous texts that were out there. Most of it is not from him. 99% of it is not his own chidushim, novelties, but rather just he worded it in a way, put those ideas in a more readable, legible way.
Only 23 parts.
And he came out with
what's it called?
Matok Midvash. It's just a commentary, sweeter than honey. It's a commentary on the Zohar. And he came out with a smaller book called Usfartem Lechem. You will count for yourselves, which is the 2 words taken from the original verse in the Torah that tells us about the Omer. And it explains what we're doing. One of those acts in our post that we're making, he explains for every day of the Omer, 3 contemplations between man and God, 3 contemplations between man and man, meaning man and his fellow, a body part to work on, a meditation to have while you're praying, a mitzvah to do, and a way to acquire the Torah. There's 48 different acquisitions of the Torah. There's 50 days of the Omer, 49 days of the Omer. So everyone matches up. And then the last one is like, okay, I've completed it, all inclusive. Now I'm getting up. Now I'm going up. So what I looked to do was to create content using this book, because it's an amazing book. And it's very nicely broken into sections that I could pull something small. And I decided to go on the action part of what physical action can I do in this world to rectify this midah, to rectify this character trait. And that's what we're doing.
Love it. Isaac's just going to grab something.
Yeah, I'll be right back. No disrespect.
It's very interesting. I know that definitely one of our goals for the next calendar year, probably 5782, is to focus more on the Hebrew calendar. It wasn't really like a conscious decision to focus on the Gregorian calendar, but it was more like, in the beginning, we were actually doing both, and then it was getting overwhelming. So we like, okay, let's just choose one. And then we do yard sites. So we did the Alter Rebbe, we did Baba Sali, we did Rambam. So we've done like major yard sites. And so I feel like next year, one of our goals is going to be focusing more on the Hebrew calendar when we can. So definitely like next Omer, we'll probably do something similar. Because it is on this dangerous history, so it's just a different branch, I guess you could say.
Yeah, there's I see one of the things I got from Rudy. We don't align on everything, but one of the major things that I got from Rudy, and also a rabbi that taught in my yeshiva, Rabbi Yehuda Cohen. I don't know if you know him from Vision Magazine and Brit Chazon, Chazon Brit. They did a decolonization sadna, like a seminar or a webinar. They took it off of YouTube. I don't know why. I really wish it could come on. I've told Rudy about it. Hopefully we'll get him to put it back on. But they talked about just decolonization and different things that happened to us as a nation while we were in Galut, while we were in exile, that were impressed upon us, like conservative, Orthodox, Reform, and all these different things. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very important, a huge part of the tshuva process that has kind of been looked over is the physical side of it, that we are a nation. We have our own, you know, clothing. We don't wear Oxford shirts like this. You know, we don't wear pants. And, you know, there's norms in society that, you know, some of the rabbis set, and now that, you know, that kind of is now our culture. But historically, our calendar, our names, like I said earlier, how you greet a woman. Do you greet a woman? Like, you know, how you sit together in social events.
You should learn from the Japanese.
Yeah. It's oftentimes that's how I say hi to people now, because it's just, you know, universally accepted. My hands, you can see them and I'm respecting you, but I'm not going to touch you. They're together.
By the way, it's only natural, like the separation thing. If you look at many traditions, like even the many Asians, like I think all of them probably, like when they're eating, I used to have a lot of Asian friends in Belgium, like the men and women naturally sit separate. The men eat separate and the women eat separate. It's not just a Jewish thing, actually. And it comes probably from the idea from Jews. I don't know. I would assume.
I think it's nature, like naturally.
It's naturally like to go the man connect. Also, if you look at events, even if it's totally secular events at a club, it's usually like groups of guys and then groups of girls.
Right. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, and this is a conversation I always have with Isaac because he comes from a more secular background. The people he surrounds himself are very like conservative, Reform, and he struggles with it because he's been coming back to it through his relationship with me. I guess I'm more modern Orthodox in these annoying terms that I don't like to use, but we end up using anyways. And one of the things that we speak about, because he just ended a relationship with somebody that was always like attacking him in a way, not attacking, but always like questioning him on, and he can probably go into it a little more, but how women are seen as less to an outside world because they don't understand the idea of Kedusha, and how at the end of the day, it's actually about uplifting the woman and separating the woman and the man, because we are, as individuals, we have a level of holiness that is reserved for certain moments. And in general, a lot of Judaism is that it's the right thing at the right time in the right place with the right person. And we apply like modern meanings of relationships and modern meanings of what it means to grow with another person to an ancient thing such as Judaism. And then it's like, oh, it's incompatible. But it's like, no, it's incompatible because it's at its source, it's going to be incompatible because you're trying to apply the horse and buggy from the times of the Silk Road to the bullet train of Japan. It's transportation, but it's not even close to the same type of transportation. So it's just, you know, that's Isaac, I don't know, I was just talking about how you know, you've been challenged on the idea of like the woman being less, and you also don't have the best background yourself to talk about it.
Right. And I also, so a lot of those discussions centered around just sort of a central frustration for me, feeling like I'm operating with less information on hand, where the person I'm having a discussion with, you know, granted it's albeit civil, they're looking at it in very much sort of simplistic terms of whether it's men and women being sort of separated in shul, or the roles of the husband and wife sort of within the household. I think it's very easy for more secular Jews, and just people in general, you don't have to be Jews to have an opinion on this, to hold that simplistic dynamic up against just sort of larger traditional gender roles within society, and to not be able to sort of see the nuance and complexity or divorce one from the other. And I think part of the problem is, and this has less to do with the content and more to do with who you pick your battles with, but I think it's hard to find people that are truly open to understanding these varied layers of complexity, unless you are coming from an upbringing that has that level of observance in the very beginning.
just to add on that, they're not coming from a place of like, oh, I genuinely want to see how Judaism actually is inclusive to women. It's coming from a place of like, no, I don't care what you say. Yeah, I'm trying to defeat your argument. Like I already made up my mind about what Judaism is, specifically in the conversation of women. And it doesn't matter what you say, because I already, my mindset is set, and they're not open to learn. They're not open to understand that the Gemara says that you're supposed to please a woman. They're not open to read the translation of Eshet Chayil. They're not open to read the Ketubah, and how it's literally, the Ketubah is just, except for obviously the concept of get and aguna, like that's a whole separate conversation that obviously we're
getting a lot of attention now recently on social media, and very good. A woman here in Sfat got her get today after nearly a year and a half of not having it. It's a big problem. So we want to add to what you guys
just said. Did she get it today?
Yeah, she got it.
She got it?
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
There's two women here in Sfat, but one of them got it. But I want to add to what you guys are saying. We're all your points were valid. I'm not negating them. I just want to add to it that with that said, for girls in the West that are trying to connect to Reform or conservative Judaism, or even Orthodox Judaism, but like more modern Orthodox, where these lines are kind of blurry with the separation between men and women. So you still kind of have like, on the one hand, we're like learning Torah, but on the other hand, we're all chilling together. And like, it kind of blurs it. When you go into a community, the similar communities that we live in, where we have plenty of events where we sit all of our wives and guys together, but we sit a lot of times separate tables, or we sit by couples or whatever it is. But then there's tons of only girl events, only guy events, right? Only girls events, a lot of only girl events where there's like women learning together here in our city. There's all these different things they have in Jerusalem, concerts, the bar distillery lounge that I'm now helping to develop. We're going to have a women's night where it's only girls. When you, as a guy, I can say this, when you go to a party in a yeshiva for bringing, sit down, you get in the bottles start coming out, and you're learning Torah and you're doing spiritual things, because in the end of the day, that's what we're going to do. We're not going just to socialize and kick back and talk nonsense. Constantly, we're trying to connect to Hashem, because it's always there, a little Mayim Achronim, right? Let's throw a little bit to the other side. But the majority of the time, our head is on how do I want to improve myself, and how do I connect more to God and to Torah. So when you're going to do that, if there's a girl in the room, it's a distraction. My wife walked in the other day, like came by the kollel to drop food off, and I was like, I learned with my father-in-law. That's my chevruta, my partner in learning. And I said, it's incredible what a woman can do to you when you're learning Torah. It doesn't matter if it's your wife, it doesn't matter if it's your sister, your mother, or anything. A woman is a woman. They're very powerful beings. They are the holiest of the holies. The highest creature that exists in this world is a Jewish woman. By far, and all of the rabbis, if they don't say this, they don't know what they're talking about, right? All the tzaddikim agree with this, everything. The highest being is a Jewish woman. When she walks
kind of
around,
the answer actually to many people have this question, I think, like, why don't women put on tefillin, right? There's this whole movement like of women of the wall, like they want to put on tefillin, they want to do all these mitzvahs, but they don't understand that the whole thing is because they're more refined, they don't
need it. They don't need to do that job. They don't need to do that work.
We are so messed up. We need 613 mitzvot.
Yeah, that is also one of the things that Isaac and I have spoken about. It's like, oh, why do you get an aliyah? Why do you get to put on tefillin? Why do you have to daven? It's like, do you want to have these responsibilities, or are you just angry?
The hardest selling point in every conversation I have.
You know, this is how the voting in the U.S. also went, Isaac.
What?
Like, voting in the U.S., you had to be a landowner. You had to sign up for the draft. There was a whole bunch of responsibilities you had to do to vote, right? And the women actually, if you look in the history of the U.S. voting rights, what is it called again?
Suffrage?
Suffrage, yeah. Majority of women in the U.S. were not for it. It was the left liberal side that was pushing it. But the majority of the women that were throughout the U.S., large part of the U.S. didn't want it. Why? Because I don't want to sign up for the draft. I'm not trying. I don't want all these obligations that come with the right to vote. So yes, we're very happy that we have mitzvot and we have so many things that Hashem does to learn Torah, put on tzitzit, put on tefillin, this, that, and the other. They're amazing because in the end, it brings us closer to Hashem. So there's a benefit there. But if you understand why we have to do it, in order to rectify everything that's happened in the past 6,000 years, in order to bring the collective soul closer to Hashem again, it's not only a huge responsibility, a lot of times it's a big obligation, especially for a person that's not raised in Torah and mitzvot. Now, okay, so let the women take all the things that the men do. They don't really do that. The women of the wall, they show up once a month to go make a protest at the Kotel. But you don't see them putting tefillin every single day. You don't see them putting on 2 different types of tefillin, praying 3 times a day, learning Torah for hours a day, doing all the other things that every single day life goes
this sort of I think touches on your point. I think it's less about discipline and dedication and more about access. So I want to know I have access to it and am viewed as an equal when I choose to participate, but I want my participation to be selective.
Right.
And I think that is, at least for me, just speaking for myself, at the forefront of the conversations that I'm having.
That's why it's important that if there's a community, they need to be making events for women. They need to be enhancing the women's learning and bringing the women together very frequently. Rosh Chodesh is the time for the women. That's a holiday that we only have for the women. It's a day that the women can give the highest blessing, and that comes 12 times a year, sometimes 13 times a year. The Jewish communities need to take advantage of that and make more things, not just on Rosh Chodesh. Every single week, there should be women's classes. There should be women's groups, WhatsApp groups of all the women talking together and hanging out together without husbands, without children, without anything. Right? So I'm all for, women being more involved. And if the more you go into the communities, you more to see that this actually does exist in the more religious communities.
And also when you look at this, maybe the more secular community or so, and if you just look at if you're trying to understand where they're coming from, also like they live in this society, we all live in this society, but they're like really involved in the society where like they're brought up in a way like men have been like suppressing them, and women are like, they don't have like the equal rights, but they don't understand the beauty in being women. You see, like, for example, like they're really encouraging women to do like very manly things, or like not to have a family, but to go for a career, instead of like understanding like it's very empowering actually to have children, to have a family. It's very beautiful. It's very special. It's actually literally the most important thing is bringing up children. It's the most responsibility they could have. It's the most important job, is literally having children. Bringing up is the most beautiful thing. I'm like a lot at home now with my child. It's like the most beautiful thing to be like, I think it's about like understanding the roles of the women instead of like trying to be so much like the man, because they see that as the ultimate, while being a beautiful is very special, and just like appreciating that for what it is. I think there's a confusion now today in society.
Right.
Because I think maybe of a lack of guidance.
Yeah. So just to bring it back and close it off on Lag BaOmer, what is something about Lag BaOmer that nobody knows about? I don't know if there is something that you want to share, maybe some story or some insight that is lesser known that people can take away. And, everyone knows the bonfires, everyone knows Sfat, everyone knows Rabbi Shimon, everyone knows Rabbi Akiva, but what's something about Lag BaOmer that, and if there's nothing, there's nothing, but is there anything
I can share? I can tell 2 personal stories that I have with Lag BaOmer, and in my eyes, clear miracles, and that I witnessed on my own flesh. Lag BaOmer, whoever doesn't know, is the largest gathering in Israel every year. Over 1.5 million people walk through Meron, which is a town of maybe 150 houses, maybe 200 houses, not more. And 1.5 million people walk through there. It's not a big place at all. There's not room for that many people, and it's not normal that many people go. It's a very hard event to arrive to.
And it's really cool. All the food is free.
Yeah, you don't pay for anything.
And there's all the time food. I don't know how they do it.
It's insane. So yeah, that ties into the first story. The first story is I got to Meron on Lag BaOmer, and I was praying, and I got really thirsty and really hungry, and I, like, at a certain point I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. Like I needed to take a break and feed the body a little bit too. So like I said to Hashem, I was like, Hashem, I don't want to stop it. I was like reading Tehillim. I wanted to finish the whole book, and I wasn't there yet, and I didn't want to interrupt it by doing the eating in the middle. But I literally had to. I couldn't read another word. So I said, Hashem, I'm so thirsty and I'm so hungry. I don't know where I'm gonna get food now, but I'm gonna get up. Please make it quick. Please give it to me. It's something good, something just enough to get me by, and a nice cold water, and let me get back inside and finish this Tehillim. I stand up. I literally take one step outside, and someone walks up to me and says, "Here, it's a big mitzvah to eat today." He hands me a plate of rice, salad, and a huge fish head filled with like the nicest meat, like fresh fish from the Kinneret, grilled, amazing. Hands it to me, and like I obviously devoured it and went back and doing my thing. But it was like I literally asked, I got up, I walked out, someone handed me a ready-made plate exactly like I asked for, and it was enough for me to satiate myself and go back. That was one. Another one that I had, which was right before I got married in 2019. I went to Lag Bomer with my rabbi. We left Jerusalem a little bit after Shkia. It takes about 6 hours to get there. In a normal day, it takes 2.5 hours. That's how much traffic there is. We finally get to Meron, and it was jam-packed. But we went to go pray. It was me, my rabbi, his brother, and his two sons, my rabbi's two sons. We get there, we all split up. We plan a time to meet back up together. All of us didn't keep that time. Obviously, it's very hard to leave Meron. And the rabbi's brother and I bumped into each other a few different times. We did our different things, though. A few months pass. I get engaged. And I tell my rabbi I got engaged. I was dating at the time, and I was planning to get engaged. And I told my rabbi I rented his synagogue to do the l'chaim, to do the vort. And I said to him, I was like, please, it's really important that you're going to be there, and you give some Torah over. He says, I can only be there for 15 minutes. But you have the place, you know the keys, you know how to clean it up. I used to pray there at the time. So I was like, I knew everything I needed to do, but he's like, I'll be there 15 minutes and then I have to go. I can't stay long. So I said, how can you not stay? Like, I'm your closest student pretty much. And it's my special day. So he says, yeah, but my brother also got engaged today. So we both were there together. We both got engaged on the same night. Then came my wedding, and my wedding was at night. His wedding was in the day. So we got engaged on the same day, and we got married on the same day, and we were in Lag Bomer at the same time, praying exactly for that. Not for it to work out like that it's the same days, but I've seen pretty miraculous things. I've seen other things, but those are two stories I have off the top of the head connected to Lag Bomer.
Nice.
I don't have anything special. I remember going 2 years ago for the first time, actually to
Meron,
Lag Bomer, and I was like,
yeah, wow. I've seen the video. It's incredible. It looks incredible.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I was with Shlomo Katz there in the bleachers with Rav Shalom Aro shooting bow and arrows into the crowd, and it's an amazing time. It's an abundance of light that really, if you don't come there with the right mindset, you can very easily start to talk bad about Jews and start not being that most happy. You get bumped a lot. In Hebrew, the word for crowd is tzafuf, and tzafuf, they say, why is it called tzafuf? This is also happened in the temple times, that it says tzafuf from milishon tzaf, from the word of tzaf, which is to float. And when you're so tight together, you start to float you up. Your feet aren't even touching the ground. And it's taken me 20 minutes to move the distance it takes to walk 20 steps. So Meron's a very special place on Lag Bomer.
I had a lot of fun.
And the sphere of the day is Hod Shebehod, which is submissiveness within submissiveness, which means the Kabbalah, which is what Rabbi Shimon brought down, is receiving, right? Kabbalah comes from the word one, to receive, and two, from Makbil, which is parallel. So to receive as a student, you have to be willing to receive. You have to make space for that. That's the midah of Hod, the midah of Aaron HaKohen. The Aaron, he was able to find and make space for all the Jews in the world and to bring peace between them. So it's not for no reason that the deepest secrets to ever be brought down were brought down on the day of submissiveness within submissiveness. So that you have to be a student willing to receive and the message that's coming from a higher place in order to improve yourself.
And you're talking about the event, and like you might think bad about Jews. I think I see where you come from, but I think it's also the opposite. Like if you think about it, like such a huge event with literally millions of people there, it's packed. It's like, you would think, okay, they're probably going to break a fight out up there. People are going to discuss. People are going to yell. It's going to be weird vibes, because it's a big party. People are like, maybe drinking here and there, but it's the most positive vibe. It's like, there's only goodness, and like you see so much. It's crazy. And like, there's like tent after tent after tent of like food, and like people just serving food constantly. New people are coming in, people are coming out. Everybody's in a good mood. People are dancing. People just meeting each other for the first time. People are saying Tehillim. It's all in yeah, it's just amazing. I just was blown away.
So, guys, everything we've just talked about boils down to the final question. If you had a billboard and it was placed in a position where billions of people could see your message, what would it say and why?
It's a really good question. I've heard it recently. Did you guys ask this before? You asked this before, right?
That's all our guests.
Yeah, okay.
We're going to make a nice clip at the end.
Very good.
I would say love your fellow as yourself.
And I would say thank you, Hashem.
Love it. Well, Avidan, Elio, thank you so much for coming on. Again, you can find them on Instagram at 2 Chassids in a Pod. Their podcast by the same name. We wish you guys a beautiful, enjoyous Lag BaOmer, and our listeners as well. Chag Sameach. Next year in Jerusalem or Meron.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on. It was a pleasure. First time being interviewed, and it's amazing to do it on such a special topic with two holy Jews.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Thank you guys for having us.
Thanks for being here.